Hi Cottenham, thank you for sending us your questions. I did come to the church on Sunday to remember those who had died in this horrific attack. Sorry we couldn't have the hustings, but I really want to answer your questions you've sent to me so you can see this before the election day. I'm a massive fan of our manifesto. I think it's a fantastic document which gives you a very clear choice and selection between really a conservative austerity, which we've already experienced for 7 years, or real investment in our future and a belief in ourselves in this country. So I'm really proud of our manifesto. I recommend if you have time to have a look at it yourself and see how we are going to put the money back into public services, our young people, and to make sure our NHS is there for the future. Yes, you're quite right. There was a massive scandal whereby some parties did actually buy their way to power, I'd suggest, and the Electoral Commission has fined the Conservative Party for that. If you ask me, it's quite a small amount really for buying an election. I think it's really important that parties are completely accountable. That's why my expenses and everyone else who's a candidate put those to the Electoral Commission to show that everything's above board. We should be winning elections on our argument and our policies, not by buying votes. You're quite right to raise that question. It's a real problem where doctor surgeries can't keep up with the amount of work coming in, and then people are going to A&E. A&E is also failing as well. The NHS is chronically underfunded, and that is the main problem. If we have decent contracts for doctors so that we're not losing junior doctors, then that would mean we have the doctors in place in the GP practices. If you also got rid of the Health and Social Care Act, which means at the moment that NHS England and the CCGs fight with each other as to who should provide GP practice provision, then that would make things simple as well. And I think it's about putting the money where it's needed on the front line, giving it to the doctors, giving it to the nurses who do such a fantastic job for our sick people. I do agree there should be a cap, definitely. I mean, I'm quite shocked at the moment about the dementia tax, why people might actually lose their own homes through having dementia. This is actually something which goes to the heart of what the NHS is there for. We all pull together our resources to make sure if we need help, then help is available. So definitely it should be capped, and the thought that this government might be going into power with no cap, or maybe whereby you might have £100,000 left over, but your house is up for sale, I think is just not good enough. The funding formula, it's not actually called fair funding anymore. The government dropped that when they realised how unfair it is, and it was becoming a caricature of itself. So the funding formula is a real problem, and as you rightly say, we are at the bottom of the pile when it comes to funding nationally. Now the thing is, this government doesn't want to reinvest in education, so it can't take money away from the wealthier schools because it doesn't want to do that and give it to the poorer schools, but it equally doesn't want to put more money in, and that is the problem. This government has voted, and certain local MPs have voted, to cut the local amount of money going into our councils and to our local funds. And for that reason, schools are now struggling. There are many schools in your area. If you haven't seen, there's a website called schoolcuts.org.uk where they show you the actual real-term cuts in terms of staff that is going to happen to your school. Labour will reinvest in our schools, and a fair funding formula is about putting more money into the system. Now the first point you want to raise before I answer that question is really important, because actually you're quite right, children will have to pay for the future of that decision. Now Labour has said in future we want to have elections for people at the age of 16 and up. Now I think that should go alongside education. There should be education in place so that young people are informed about how our system works, but I think young people from 16 and up should be allowed to make these decisions because they're the ones, as you rightly say, who have to live with the consequences of that result. With regards to the specifics of this particular question about who decides the European Referendum decision at the very end, I think it should be a free vote in Parliament. That is because, as an MP, if I was your MP in South Cambridgeshire, I would want to look at the terms of the negotiation. If it turned out it's bad for our country, I would decide, based on what's best for our country, showing real leadership. Giving it to referendum, whereby you might have some awful campaigns like last time, cast your mind back to last summer, If then, for instance, we decide to leave on a bad deal, or even worse, Theresa May saying no deal whatsoever, then I think that's worse for our country, and it means that Parliament's hands would be tied. So a free vote in Parliament is essential. The Labour Party is different in this regard to the Conservatives. The Conservatives have clearly put their immigration policy above their economic policy, and that is wrong. And we're the other way around. We want to really think, how is the immigration going to benefit the whole of society and our economy as well? Arbitrary targets, I don't think, are there for a reason, for economic reasons. They're there because they're a dog whistle to people in the country, and they're wrong. So the cap should no longer be there. We want to have an immigration that actually is there for our jobs. And if you look at South Cambridgeshire, we are losing people now. We need to encourage people into our country to work in our different industries, and that is why we're not going to have a cap on immigration ever. You're quite right, we only have one planet, and it's really important that we pass that on to our children in a better condition than we've inherited it so far. That is why I'm really shocked that Trump can turn his back on climate change, and Theresa May suggests that somehow she's trying to encourage him to come back to the table by saying she's disappointed. We need real action now, and not just words. And that is why it's essential that all of our green protections that we have managed to actually earn and work towards in the EU, we must make sure come into British law. That is really essential. We're going to ban fracking as well in our country if we're elected. We're not going to allow it to get through the back door like it has in some parts of the country. And we're going to make sure in the future we work with the rest of the world to come up with new ideas and new solutions so that we can be carbon neutral, have clean water and clean air as well. Really important question. So thank you so much, Cottenham, for your questions. Obviously, there's not long until the election, so I just want to make sure you've got a plan of how you're going to vote tomorrow, when it's going to be and where, so make sure you know your polling stations. I urge you to vote for whichever party you choose, but of course I would say, in particular, if you want to, vote Labour.